Before I start, can we just give some appreciation to our amazing GA delegation? And you only heard from some of them, y'all. We have a lot of myths about our democracy, and I believe that we need to be the ones who are willing to name them so that we can actually make our ideals come true. And one of those myths, I believe, is about what it means to love our nation. You know, in my experience, when you love someone, you are willing to be honest with them. If they harm you or someone that you love, if you love them, you don't just allow that to continue. You speak to them from your love because you believe in them and you know that they can do better and that in your conversation you will learn something that will let you live better too. On this day, when we celebrate the acts that led to the United States of America, which is not the only American nation, by the way, we can gather in that spirit of love and say, beloveds, we need to do better. I was glad and grateful that Stacey Abrams and Desmond Meade spoke to us, as Elsie said so eloquently, at our General Assembly of Congregations this year. They joined very distinguished ranks, as you heard, and so many others who have influenced the hearts and minds and souls of the nation. And last night, as I contemplated Mary Beth's call to worship, I was struck that as our assembly works to be more inclusive and ensure that all can participate, a great deal of time and effort is being directed into ensuring that people cannot participate in our greater society. Specifically, that they can't exercise their right to vote, which the late John Lewis, who we lost during the pandemic time, said is almost sacred among us. Census abuse, redistricting, closing polling places, requiring a very narrow range of IDs that are government issued or restricting registration to licensed drivers, the sunsetting of most of the Voting Rights Act, removing tens of thousands of voters for being inactive, which can include people who don't vote except in presidential elections. The list of assaults on voting rights is much longer than I have time for this morning. And last week, though, in preparation for this service, I read Stacey Abrams' book, The Time Is Now, and I really want to commend it to you because I realized, as someone who thinks they're paying attention, that I have not been paying enough attention. The League of Women Voters president in Ohio, when trying to go through a list of people that were going to be removed from the list of voters as inactive, found her own name on the list, even though she had voted in every election. In Mississippi, it was proposed that you would have to pay a notary fee to submit an absentee ballot. And Abrams herself, when she went to vote for herself as governor, you know, with the cameras in tow, the way they do for those things, found that she was told initially that she was ineligible to vote. Now, why is all this happening? There's a lot to this. We can't go into all of it today. But Abrams points out that this new authoritarian populism, as she calls it, is fueled by a change of demographics. While claiming that majority rule is being undermined, the advocates of all these measures to limit voting are doing so because our nation has become two things that they find very frightening. One, we know our nation is becoming less white. The other one is our voters are becoming younger. Estimates are that 40% of our nation is now non-white, and that we have all heard it's only a few decades out before the nation will be what California already is, majority minority. And we're still here, by the way, right? It didn't destroy us. But the other thing that I think people are finding very difficult to conceive of is that millennials and Gen Xers together are now the largest voting bloc in our nation. I don't think the people, yes, that was worth applauding. Go right ahead, John Rasmussen. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. So to preserve the status quo, those who sometimes wave our flag and claim to be the biggest proponents of democracy are now working to undermine its heart, which is our right to vote and to be counted and to have our opinions known. Last night, a delegation of 6 of us joined Faith in Action East Bay at a rally to use this weekend to call and request a path to citizenship be included for the 11 million undocumented people who are already living in this nation, who have been caught in this odd limbo since every path to citizenship has been closed. We have a handout available for you after the service, and some of those folks who were with me last night will help hand them out. It will be emailed out later this week. But the point is that many of these people are the same people that we were all applauding as essential workers. And yet we still have no way for them to get basic services or even to have their opinions known. I did my call while I was at the event last night. It took less than 4 minutes to do. There are many myths among us about democracy. A myth is that our nation has always been the exceptional prime example of true democracy. And while it's true that the particular blend of Enlightenment and indigenous thought which undergirds our system is strong, in actuality, we have continued to struggle to realize its promise for all, and we all pretty much know that now. There's another myth that states are taking steps to clean up voter fraud. Instead, what we see is an assault, especially in a number of states, on all these different ways that they can limit who can vote, including people who should be eligible to vote. There is a myth among us that the 4 years of assault on the foundations only. The truth is they were just the warning shot. And we cannot rest. We need to take the small acts that we can to keep defending our democracy. There's another myth that I think we've relied on a long time, and that is that our Supreme Court will come around and clean up any problems we have with rights. And we've seen week after week now that that is no longer the case for us in this particular era. In recent years, we have seen how love of country can be used as a way to shame and bully. So today, can we start to embody a different form of love, honest enough to see where we still need to work, kind enough to say what needs to be said, committed to the idea that power is not a zero-sum game, but rather an expandable resource, faithful enough to make that 1 or 2 or 3 phone calls, to take that one action, to be mindful to act while we still can. You know, we can be mythbusters, and we can do the small acts. Before we sit down for the barbecue or the recounting of what fireworks were and explaining it to people that maybe have never seen them or watching them on TV here on our part of the world, let's take a few minutes and make a recommitment to democracy and its ideals. It can be by making the calls, by checking out Fair Fight, which is the organization Stacey Abrams founded the year that she didn't become governor of Georgia. Or you can watch the Ware lecture from last week's General Assembly of Congregations, or take any number of other steps that you know to do. We have a lot of myths about our democracy, and we need to be, we can be, we must be the people who keep the true American dream, the one of an inclusive and compassionate democratic system alive. May we be the ones who make it so.